How do you look for the best director of news? Tracy Short and I were assuming the responsibility of management of Southern Lakes Media, which operated 8 community newspapers, including the Burlington Standard-Press. And we needed a new director of news, and we really wanted to raise the bar on the journalistic integrity of the paper. We searched the state, and the winner consistently of the best newspaper contest in the Wisconsin Newspaper Association was the Ozaukee Press in Port Washington. And many of the stories that were getting recognition had the byline of Ed Nadolski. And so we contacted Ed and campaigned for him to move to Burlington, and fortunately he said yes. And so we all benefited from that hire. It was the best hire we ever made.
If you want to understand Ed, both as a journalist and as a human being, you kind of need to know 3 things. The first is, I don't think he was capable of seeing anything but the best in any person he interacted with. Second, he approached each person in each situation he was in with compassion and kindness. And third, he was determined to bring every last bit of excellence out of every single person he dealt with. He wanted to approach each person and bring out the best in them. And I don't know if that was the way he was wired, if it was his religion, his faith, or if it was just the tremendous human being that he was.
They put out a call in our parish, St. Mary's, because we have like a sister parish there, St. Joseph's in Nagalama. They're a very poor parish. And so Ed answered the call, and I did. Ed was the right person to go to Uganda because he was a journalist. He knew how to write. He was an observer. He kept all of us focused on what we were there for, and to help the people and to be concerned about their welfare and to observe, where we could help them better, really.
I have known Ed Nadolski for the better part of the last 20 years. In fact, the first time that I met Ed, he was speaking at a Rotary meeting, telling the group about his mission work that he had done over in Africa, and he brought his story back to the Rotary group, not to brag about what he's done, but he really told the story of his work there to encourage others to think about doing the same.
Burlington Rotary and the Wagner Foundation have collaborated and worked together for the people of Belize. And it was mainly in their Belize Emergency Response Team program. They're called BERT. And the main purpose was to provide ambulances and aircraft for medical flights. Rotary was fully involved in a lot of our projects there, and I wanted to see some of the Burlington Rotarians see what it was accomplishing. At one point, I asked Ed and Dave Gopinski if they would like to go with me. Belize is a different country. It has a different environment, and it has a little bit of a different culture, but Ed was always the same. He was still the same person. He was kind, he was thoughtful, he was considerate, he was concerned, he was interested, and he had empathy. Ed was a Christian, and I learned so much from him. I am just eternally grateful that I had the many years to work with him on so many different things. He's a wonderful friend, and I'm just thankful.
I got to know Ed a little bit better when we both served as board members for the Veterans Terrace and the Burlington Community Fund. Bobbie and Dick Wagner had recruited us Most of you probably remember the Great Flood of 2017. We had formed a subcommittee, and Ed volunteered to help organize applicants that needed some personal assistance. And it was a pretty significant project. We collect applications from the community, review the applications, and then to distribute funds out to the community to actually help these individuals. And that year, we had granted over $500,000 of assistance to the flood victims. And I'm proud to say that Ed was a significant part of that process.
To the Spiders youth football program, number one is knowledge of football. He was a very good football player in high school and in college. So he wanted them to learn, but he also did it in a way that they respected him because he was so knowledgeable of the game. So I think they just really gelled very, very well with Ed. And that's great because we're talking 8th grade boys, and sometimes they think they know everything already. So for that, it was really cool to see Ed and those kids gelling together. He didn't just teach them how to play football. He taught them how to live life. It was more than the X's and O's of the football game. It was the X's and O's of life. And he taught those kids how to treat each other as teammates, because some of these kids didn't really know each other. They came from several different schools. So he taught them how to get along to become a team from different backgrounds. They became friends, and several teams were very, very successful. And a lot of that I attribute to him.
In our family, the youngest one is developmentally disabled, Andrew, our youngest brother. And I think on some level that was a gift to our family because we learned how to exist and love and be in a family with someone who was very different and needed a lot more care and help. Again, it was a gift to us as a family, and I think it shaped Ed a lot. You know, in Wisconsin, it's God, family, and the Green Bay Packers. He was a dedicated family man. You know, it's hard to look up to your younger brother, but at times, that's what I did. I think Ed's family was probably a wider definition than just his wife and kids. I think he embraced the community in Burlington when he moved down here. You can't report on and understand the community unless you're a member of that community. So I think in some sense, family extended to the people in this area. I think Ed understood, as we all should, that we're all sons and daughters of God. I mean, we're all one family. And I think here's a guy who put that into practice, who understood that and lived those values.
Hi, my name is Manuela. I was an exchange student from Brazil 12 years ago. My first family, Edward was my host father. And I was a little afraid because I didn't know what to expect. And he made me feel like home the whole time I stayed with Nadolski family. He was very dear to receive me at his house, and he made me feel part of the family. He welcomed me in with love, and I'm so grateful to spend the time with the Nadolskis. And I want to send all my condolences to Nadolski family.
Ed defined his family, one simple word: love. When we were together, it was always about Jackie and those kids. You know, he was so proud of them and he loved them so much.
There is such a thing as power of the press, and for years the Standard Press carried on the masthead the slogan, "The most effective single force in building a good community is a good community newspaper." And Ed was not only a fantastic journalist, he was a great writer, but he understood how to use the newspaper to accomplish things. And I think that's what's meant by power of the press. It wasn't just reporting a story, it was with an outcome of something that would benefit the community. And he did so much of that, and I think that's what makes somebody humanitarian.
He was a quiet leader. He could lead, but maybe lead from almost behind by not pushing himself forward, really. He was very good at that. He helped us to see all of those occasions where we could help more and be of service.
The Scenic Shore 150 was a fundraiser for leukemia and lymphoma. And it was one of our favorite things to do every year. Whether we had 4 people riding or 14 people riding, it didn't matter. We always started out the same way. Ed was in the beginning and the leader of the group, and he would call it out that we're going to just keep a nice easy pace, 18, 19 miles an hour, so nobody gets dropped from the ride. And then about 5 miles into the ride, we'd all be gasping for air, and we looked down at our speedometers, and we're pulling like 23, 24 miles an hour. So at that point, we just all laughed and said, Ed, we'll meet you at the end. So that was what we called to and referred to as riding at Ed speed. I think Ed kind of attacked his life with that same level of energy and compassion. And it didn't matter what he was doing. He was going to find a way to do something good to help out other people. And the Scenic Shore Ride is one example of how, yes, we're doing a fun thing and riding bike for a couple days. Some people actually find that to be fun. But at the same time, the Leukemia Lymphoma Society benefited from, in aggregate, a little over $2 million every year that they raise for fighting bloodborne cancers. And so that was a real important event for Ed and for everybody that rode with Ed.
Because he was living with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, he became aware of the need to fund research for answers to treating the many people that are afflicted with these blood cancers. So we rode, raised money for LLS, and made some dear friends in the process. As for Ed, he was always the most athletic cancer patient I ever heard of. Always finished well ahead of me, having time to change clothes and get a beer before watching me finish.
I'll never forget the one meeting that Ed walked into with a big grin on his face, and he announced to everybody that he had great news. The great news was that he was going to have a hip replacement. We all kind of looked at each other like, how is that great news, Ed? And he explained that his cancer markers, his blood test came back, and it was under control enough that he was able to have hip replacement. Well, all of us Scenic Shore riders that knew Ed knew that meant just one thing, that Ed was coming back next summer to kick our butts. And of course he did.
If there's one thing I would share about Ed is, you know, we loved him. And if there's anything we can take away from Ed, is to live like him. My advice is we all consider living like Ed.